really wonderful to have this group here in Italy. I know that it's a bit of a travel to get to this place for a lot of people, but hopefully the setting makes up for it. This is our third digital disease detection conference. Our first one was a few years ago in Boston, and since then the community has really grown pretty amazingly. And so you'll see this year in this conference we have a lot of new topics, a lot of new faces, a lot of new ideas that are going to be presented. I just wanted to set the context very quickly as far as how this whole field emerged and what we're thinking about in terms of where the field is going. Of course, the concept of DDD really emerges from the fact that this data comes through non-traditional clinical channels, meaning that there's huge amounts of data, our digital exhaust, if you will, from social media and devices and informal sources, that really the idea is that can we tap into that to get a different picture of individuals and of population health. And really with that in mind, we've been really thinking about the idea of how do you organize that huge amount of content that's very different from the kinds of sources we think about in general public health and in clinical research, and bring that information together to actually derive some insight of populations, insights of new emerging public health trends. Obviously, a lot of the initial area of this work has been focused in infectious disease, but we'll see across this conference that it's extending into a number of different exciting domains. And of course, not just from the fact of early detection, but also refining the distribution of disease and understanding where diseases might occur that you wouldn't know given the current landscape of public health infrastructure. And beyond that, the idea that forecasting, we can actually make some perspective views of where diseases may emerge. The core of this community really is about data. This is just a word plot of the content from the abstracts that were submitted. And what's really exciting about this particular field is it's constantly changing because the access to data is changing, but also the types of information people are putting out there is changing, and the sources of information are extremely dynamic. So whereas one social network that we're using a couple years ago goes out of favor, new sources come into play. And so what's exciting is that it's not a static field. It's exciting from the methodologies, but also from the new types of information that we can tap into. There's some really important movements that are changing in the field. As you can imagine, social networks are really moving into the visual domain. And so we're going to increasingly, I think, over the next several years, see how people are interpreting images off social networks, and that's going to be exciting. And of course, the movement to mobile is such an important arena for us as well, and you'll see some great talks over the next couple days about the use of mobile devices. In fact, you can look at, I'm sure many people in this room use WhatsApp. The number of messages on WhatsApp is overtaking SMS, and we're seeing incredible expansion of a number of different apps in this space. What also has changed, of course, and we're going to hear this in our next keynote, is the sort of emergence of wearables and how those are becoming so pervasive, and the data that's generated from those devices and how that can impact our views of population health. But even beyond that, the idea that all our devices are becoming increasingly connected, and what is the kind of information that we're going to be able to derive from those devices that are frankly going to be greater in number than the human population. And then finally, the idea, and this is not an area that's going to be heavily addressed in this session just because it came to be in the weeks before this conference, but of course the idea of participatory surveillance is so key to this field. We're seeing now the new technologies like the research kit that are unfolding that are going to be completely changing the paradigm of crowdsourcing and participatory research and really dramatically changing the ways in which patients and the general population engage in providing their data. The field keeps growing, so if you just look at a PubMed search of the use of Facebook, Twitter, Google, it's doubling every year, and so we've had a threefold increase since the first DDD1 of medical research that's using these types of tools. So it's really exciting to see this field emerge. And in fact, from the perspective of this conference, we saw a dramatic increase in the international community and their attendance at this meeting as well. So now 40 countries across 182 organizations. So very exciting that we have that great kind of representation at this meeting. I just, before we even get started, I do want to give a huge thank you to a number of people that were part of this meeting, especially Emily Cohn, who you've, I'm sure, gotten a number of emails from and has dealt with every little minute aspect of this meeting. But a whole group of people were involved, and of course, sponsorships from Skoll and ISI and Booz Allen Hamilton. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to